All right, everybody, what you see on screen is the assignment that you will be completing. This is in Illustrator, and you're going to practice making grids and also practice how to make a pattern. These are skills that I think are helpful for you as you continue your architectural studies, and it also allows you the opportunity to look at a building and observe it, study it, and break it down. And one of the best ways to break it down is to draw it. So we're going to use this digital tool here, Adobe Illustrator. And it is a vector editing program. It's not like Photoshop. Photoshop is where I edit photos. And I know that you see a photo in here. We're bringing it in for reference. But this is really for vector artwork. That's what Illustrator is really good at. So I'm showing you more or less what it's going to look like when you've completed the assignment. So up here, you're seeing that I assembled a sample of this building. Like, what is an area that repeats itself? And I picked the four windows spanning across the bay. And I'm using that as an example to show you how to make a grid. And then I took those same elements, broke them down, changed them a little bit, randomized them as best I can to create an abstract pattern. And that's what you see represented over here. You can go ahead and arrange your board any way that you'd like to. I'm just showing this as an example on how to get started. You're welcome to repeat this exercise with me, but if you'd like to, go ahead and immediately apply the concepts to a building that you selected, that you took a photo of. So you will need to place the photo there and then start drawing the elements out. So I'm going to create this assignment all over from scratch so you can see how I went about it, but I'm going to hang on to it as a reference. So when you get started with Illustrator, you'll go ahead and probably get to a start screen, and it'll ask you to start a new project or a new file. So I'm just going to come up here to File, and I'm going to click on New. And when I click on New, I have some options, and I'm going to come over here to Print. And when I go to Print, I'd like to select Tabloid. And then I'm going to come over here to the width and the height. And instead of it being measured by point sizes, I am selecting inches. And that is automatically an 11 by 17 sheet size. And then I want to orient it landscape. So I give that a click. And then from here, I look at my color mode. It's CMYK, which is fine. This is what's used for high-end printing. If you change it to RGB, you're going to get a message here, a warning message telling you that the profile doesn't match what's being defined on the screen, or something like that. So just go ahead and, sorry, I went and clicked too much on there. I'm going to go back to my advanced options. Go ahead and leave it at CMYK. Everything else also stays the same, and then you can go ahead and create. Once you create this artboard, the next thing to do is save it as. So wherever it is that you're saving your files, you'll go ahead and save it by the file name indicated in Brightspace, or as I may have mentioned in class. So something along the lines of your first initial last name will be included in the name, and then refer to my Brightspace, or see where else it might be described. If you'd like to name it something now and then change the name later, that's going to be okay also. But I'll go ahead and begin. So now that I've gotten this started, what I'd like to do now is add the photo. So I already have the photo in my folder, and I have that off to the side over here. Give me 1 second while I pull it over. So here's my folder. And I can easily just click, drag, and drop the photo in. That's one way of doing it. So if I go click, drag, drop, there's the photo, and it comes in pretty big. So if you'd like to do it that way, more than welcome to, but I'll show you another way of doing it. So let me go ahead and edit, undo the paste, and then I'll go back to my folder, move that out of the way. And what I'll do is I'll come up here to File, and I'm going to select Place. And when I go to Place, it'll find my folder, and I've already navigated there before. So I'll just go ahead and pick my sample photo and go ahead and place. Now, you'll notice where it says link. Keep that on because you do want your files linked. It's a good practice to do that. If you don't have that linked, it'll go ahead and just embed it in here. But if you want to find that file later or maybe replace it with a different photo, you may not know where the file is, so you just have to do everything manually. It's common practice to just leave the files linked. So I'll go ahead and place. And then when I do that, I have an option here, and it's showing me that if I just give it one click, which I'll do right now, it brings the image in at the actual size. And then I can move it around, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So I'm going to use my Control minus key. That will zoom me out. And I'm able to see the image. And if I want, I'll click and drag the corner. And you'll notice how it is not making it proportional. So I have to hold down the Shift key in order for that to be proportional so that I can move it around. I can also come over here to my properties and click on the proportions and lock those in. And now when I click and drag, nope, still not doing it. So I definitely have to hold down the Shift key. All right. The other thing I can do, let me edit, undo scale. Let me undo this a couple of times. And I'll do this one more time. I'll go to File, Place. I'm going to select the sample photo. I'm going to click Place. And this time I'm going to click and drag. And when I do that, it's bringing in the image, and I'm able to set it to whatever size I want. And then I go ahead and release my mouse key, and there it is. So those are the two different ways of doing that. Also, before I continue, let me pause for a second because your interface may look slightly different than mine. So I want to make sure that we're all on the same interface, same settings here. So what you should do is what I'm about to do here, which is go to Window, and you're going to go to Workspace, just hover over that. First of all, make sure that it is set to Essentials because that's what I'm using, and you'll find all of the icons where they should be. And then go ahead and click on Reset Essentials. And notice when I did that, a lot of things changed over here on the right-hand side, and that's okay. I'm going to proceed now so that your screen and my screen look similar, and let's go ahead and begin making some objects here. So I'm going to be zooming in and out, and I use my Control plus to zoom in and my Control minus to zoom out. I'm just used to that. I hold down the space bar and then I click and drag in order to pan around. And then I'll do that again. So this is the image that I would like to use, and I want to focus on one area right here. Now, if it gets a little tricky to be zooming in and out and all that, one thing you can do is you can take that image, you can do a Control copy, and then a Control paste, which is Control V. And I'm able to paste it over here. And then from here, I can draw a rectangle. And I'll just draw a rectangle in the area that I'd like to focus on, which is right about here. And I'll make it a little bit bigger just to see a little bit more there. And once I have that drawn, I'll go ahead and go back to my selection tool, give that a click. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and select the photo. So now I have both the photo and the rectangle selected. And then I can right click and I can now make clipping mask. So by doing that, I can now take that mask. And by the way, see how it's showing me the whole image, and that's okay. That's the whole size of it. I can move this around. So it's going to be a lot easier for me now to zoom in, Control plus, and just focus on that general area. And I'm panning over so that when I go to draw my shapes, I have that reference very close to me. So now I'll go ahead and proceed. And it looks like I have 4 rectangles. So I'm going to draw 2 of them to represent that first window. And I'll just come up here to my rectangle tool. And I'll draw 1 rectangle, 1 click, and drag. Because if you just click and release, it gives you different options. So click and drag. And I'm going to make that window about this big. And I'm just eyeballing it. In other words, I'm just taking a look at the proportions and trying to match them. I'm not going in here and trying to trace. That's something else, and I want you to do this separately. So there's my object, And as I look at it, if I click off of it, and let me click over here, notice how it looks like it disappeared, but it's still there. And if I hover just for a second, there it is. Be really careful because over here on the properties, on the appearance, if you don't have a fill or a stroke, yes, it's going to disappear. So I'm going to give it a stroke by clicking on it, and then I'm just going to select black for now, just so that I have the outline and I don't lose it. So I've got that, and then I'm going to click back on my selection tool, click off of the object, and then draw the pane below it. So back to my rectangle tool, and keyboard shortcut is M if you'd like to use that. So if I type M, there it is. And then I'm just going to click and drag. And then notice how it's lining up, which is really nice. But let's say you accidentally miss it and you don't get it to line up and you do something like that, okay? Which is totally fine. I'm now going to zoom in, Control plus, real close like that. And then I go back to my selection tool and I'm going to click and drag my grip here and then just bring it in until it locks in or snaps to that intersection. If you don't have that intersection snapping, come up to the, let's see, I think it's under View. Yes. So you go to View and then you come down here and you have Smart Guides. So make sure that the check mark is on and then you'll be able to snap. All right. And now I can click here and I think the window is just a little bit taller, but it was still not as high as the other one. And then I'm going to zoom out. So Control minus, there we go. And I'll pan over. And I really just need to look at any one of the windows. And maybe they are even, maybe they're not, maybe I'm off. I'll just click this and bring it down. Maybe it's something like that. Okay. So now that I have that one, I'm looking at the window next to it, and it's a little bit wider. So the two windows in the middle, they almost form like perfect squares, and then my two windows on the sides are rectangular in shape. So I will go ahead and draw the other window. So I'm going to make sure that I'm able to start that. Sorry, I accidentally clicked. I'll click off of it, and then I'll type M, and then I'll click right here. Let's see if it'll give it to me, that path. Yes, click it, drag it. It's not giving it to me exact, and that's all right. And then I'm going to bring it out, and there. Now it's showing me that it is a square, so I'll go ahead and release the button. And I'm going to come over here to my selection tool, and I'm just going to move it out of the way for a second, and then I'm going to move it back so that it lines up. There we go, hitting the intersection. Great. I've got that. And then I'll take this object and I will copy it down. To do that, I'm just going to move it. And to move it, you just basically click and drag, but then hold down the Alt key, ALT. It's right next to the space bar. And then as I bring it down, I'm just going to let it lock in. Actually, no, I'm not going to let it do that because that might not be the right size. So I'm just going to move it right here and release. Okay, that's done. And now I'm going to zoom in, Control plus, 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 and then pan as needed. And then I'm going to take it and line it up at the top. There we go. It's intersecting there. And then I'm going to click and drag and line it up in this direction. And now it's intersecting and it's locking in right there. And then I'll take this rectangle and bring it down like that. Okay, so Control minus takes me out. I have my windows, and now before I continue, it's time to start adding some color. So, and also to edit the strokes. So if I pick just one of my rectangles here, you'll see that over on my properties, the appearance, there's no fill to it. I can click on fill and I can pick, let's say, this green color for now, and it'll fill it in. And then I can come over to the stroke. Let me click away from that window. And then on the stroke, if I want to, I can keep it black, or I can click on it and maybe it's meant to be a gray color or something. So I can come over here to my grays, pick that. And then maybe the stroke, let me click away from that, is less. So I want to change the stroke and just dial it down using my arrow keys there. And then maybe it's 0.5 thickness, points in thickness. I'll click over here and then zoom in to this area. And by the way, I have something called scrubby zoom turned on. So when I type Z, I can just click and drag from my left to the right and it just zooms right in. All right. And that looks like it could work for the outline and not necessarily the color. So now I'm going to address the color. So let me pan over a little bit, tapping my Z key and then clicking and dragging. Let's see. Nope, too far. I'm going to use my control minus because I have more control over that. And I'll just bring it over here. All right. So now for that fill color, I want to match the color over here. So I will go ahead and back to my selection tool. I'm now going to click on that shape. And then over here on the fill, if I, let's see, if I look at it there, if I click it, no, it shows me these options, shows me that color. This isn't where I want to click. Apologies. I want to come over here to my swatches and they're relatively small. Apologies. That's just how Illustrator is. And I'm going to give this a double click because that's the fill color. And when I double click that, this color picker shows up. And I can pick a color here, or I can go to the eyedropper. And when I click on the eyedropper, now I can bring it over and I can sample a color. So I may want to sample this color and notice how it's changing it. Or I may want to sample this color, see how it changes it there too. Or any other color. You pick it, and I'll just go with this one for now, and that works out just fine. So that's another way of selecting colors and matching colors to something that's already there. So now that that is working, I'll go ahead and click on my selection tool, and I'll go over here and click on OK, and then click off of the object. So that's what I want my object to be. Now, I want everything else to then match that color. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick it again. And then I want to open up my color swatches, and let's see if it'll open when I click here. Okay, there's the color swatch. And I'm going to see if this will work. If I click, drag and drop, nope, that's not going to work there. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to select that color, click, drag. Nope, that doesn't work either. So I do have to open my swatches. Apologies. So I'm going to go to Window, and I want to open my swatches. So right here, I give that a click. Swatch. So there are my swatches, and then I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Okay. So now let's see if it'll work this time. If the color is here, if I click it and drag it right into that area, it's a little small, and then release. You see how it takes that color and now it places it in here along with my other colors, which is great. So now all I have to do is window all of my objects like this. And then for the fill color, all I have to do is just click right here and fill it in. So they're all the same. And then for the stroke, I think I forgot well, I did forget what I did, but that's all right. I'll come over here to the stroke, and now I'm going to do it to all of them at once, and I'll pick that gray color. And then the stroke size, I think I had it set to 0.5, so I'll just change it here to 0.5, and they all adjust at once. If that's too light for you, adjust whatever you need to do. I'm just showing you your options. And now I'm going to take this swatch and just basically place it right over here, just on the side. And then I'll continue. So I can take these two or these objects, I'm going to pan over, and they basically just repeat themselves over to the other side. So I'm going to pan this over. I am going to window my objects like this, and then I'm going to make a copy of them. And all I have to do is click, and then I start dragging, and then I hold down the Alt key, and it makes a copy. And it doesn't matter right now if I keep it straight or not. I just want to put a copy over here and release. All right, those four are now selected. And I believe I can now come up here to Object. And let's see if I can do this. Transform and Reflect. So when I reflect, I get this option. And it's reflecting right now about the vertical. That's what I wanted. I'm all set. I can go ahead and click OK. Done. And then I'm going to move them over so that they're in line right there. And I'm all set. I now have my windows. And then now's a good time to use your Control S to save so that you don't lose any of this work that you've done. So I'm going to use Control minus now and zoom it out. So that's the beginnings. That's where I chose to start. And then I'm going to pan this over a little bit. And let's say that this window right here, or that object, represents this window. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue across. I need to put in the sill. I need to put in the head over here and then the top. And then I'm going to also draw this rectangle because it is different and then it will repeat itself at this point right here. So I need to keep generating my pattern or that repetition until I get to the part where it repeats itself again. So I'm going to draw a rectangle down at the bottom to represent the sill. So rectangle again, and then I'm going to draw from this anchor point all the way over here. I'm going to let it lock in, and I'm not going to concern myself too much with the height of the rectangle yet. I just want to get it to lock in. I'm all set. It's currently highlighted. I want to change the fill color. So I come over here to the swatch, give that a double click. And then I come up here to my eyedropper. And I'm going to click right in this area and see if it picks up that color. And it looks like it did. I can see that. But you can sample in other locations also, see what it'll do, see what you prefer. And I think I'll stay with, yeah, I think that color right there will do. And then if you want, you can still make some adjustments here because what you're seeing is your hue, your saturation, your brightness, and then the RGB color. So on the saturation side, I can click on saturation and then I can lighten that up or I can darken it up. In other words, saturate it less or more. And then to lighten it up, or actually that's the hue, this is the brightness. Here's where I would lighten it up, and then this is where I would make it darker. So you can still manipulate that. So I'll do that, click OK. I've got it. And then I'll tell you what, I'll bring this swatch right over here. And then I will go ahead and click, drag, and drop it right into my swatches. So I now have those two colors. And then I'll bring that back over here. All right, I will continue. Sorry, I accidentally clicked. I was still in the rectangle mode, and this is what it will do. So I'll just cancel. All right, to continue, I need to put the sill or the soldier course at the very top. Oh, and I also need to change the size of this. So I'm just going to go in there and just eyeball it like that. And then at the top, it looks like my soldier course is probably almost the same thickness. So here's what I'll do. I'm going to type, actually not type, I'm going to click on my selection tool. And then I'll go ahead and take this shape, bring it up, and then hold down the Alt key and then place it right here so it lines up. And then here's where I'm going to zoom in right now, Control plus, and then pan over. I'll take this height, just stretch it up a little bit. And then I want to change the color. So back to my color swatches and then pick the eyedropper. And then it's like a light brick color here. All right, let me move this out of the way. That looks like it'll work. And then I'll go ahead and click OK. And then click off of it. At this point, if you wanted to change the outlines, you certainly can do that also because I had set it to the frame outline. I can pick this object and maybe I don't want a stroke on it because really there isn't a stroke. So if I click on stroke and I turn it off, I can get that effect. Maybe that's what I want, or maybe I want a stroke that is a little bit darker, but not as thick. So change that thickness down a little bit. And 0.25 is as low as it will let me go, and that's okay. So I can do that. And then I can do the same thing up here. And in this case, I think I will remove the stroke. That's just a personal choice. And then if I zoom in, here we go. I'm going to just click. There we go. And you'll notice that, and let me zoom in even closer, like right here. I want you to see something that I did not put a stroke. So it's it's basically empty, so it looks like it does not line up. It doesn't matter to me right now. If I wanted to, I can maybe bring this out a little bit more, but it's already locking in. That's just something to be aware of. It's not a big deal. So just keep that in mind. And then also you'll notice how this object is actually in front of the frame, or the outline of that rectangle. And what I can do right now is I can right click it and I can come down here to arrange and I can send backward. And sometimes it sends it behind all of them. Sometimes it doesn't. So here's what else you can do. You come over to your layers and then you expand the layers. And these are all the objects that I've drawn. And it also has the um, photo in here. I'll select this object and it tells me that that's the rectangle. And then it's sitting up on top. And what I can do is I can take that and drag it down like this. And then I'm placing it all the way at the bottom of the order. And now notice how it's behind all of those rectangles. All I did was click and drag down on that rectangle. And then I'll pan down over here. I can select this object, that rectangle, and then I can just click and drag that down as well to the bottom. And now that's behind the other objects. And then the same or similar condition here, the stroke on this, if I select it and I go to properties, it is 0.25. If I increase it, now it is matching the other stroke and now it's in line. So think about that. And I guess the one thing I could do is I could select this object, and I know I said I didn't want a stroke, but I could click on the stroke. And did I save that color yet? Not yet. So give me 1 second. I'm going to take my swatches again, bring them over here, and then I'm just going to click, drag, and drop right into my, okay, hang on. I'm going to escape because it's in the way and I want you to see what I'm doing here. So I'm just going to click, drag, and drop and place it right in here with the others. Okay, now that I have that, I can come over to my stroke and I can pick that color right here. And then I will change that stroke to match the others. And this is me just being really particular, but that's how we are in architecture. All right, Control minus zooms me out. I'm almost there. I need to put in the brick wall above. So I'm going to go to my selection tool. I'm going to select this object, and then I'm going to click it, hold down the Alt key, just make a copy up here, let it line up right there. And if you have to, you can hold down the Shift key because that'll lock it in. So I'll put it right there. Release my control, or rather my Alt and Shift key. Come in here, bring this down so it locks in, and then bring this to where I think it should be in terms of height, right about there. And then I need to change that color. So I select my object. It's showing me what my fill is and my stroke. So I double click on the fill swatch. I go and click on my color picker, and I'll pick this brick color. And that's darker. Or I can pick this one, a little bit lighter. But here's where you can modify it, sample from other locations, whatever is to your liking. The brightness, you can adjust the brightness here if you want. I'll leave it like that and then click OK. I want you to have fun with this experience. Oh, and the other thing, since I have that color and it's good practice right now, I'll just go ahead and click, drag, and drop it right there. So I have it. And then I'll go to my stroke and I'll match that color to it. Okay. And then the last thing I need to do here, let's see, I'm going to pan over. So I started in this location, working over. I need to put in this rectangle. So I'll do that now. I'll draw a rectangle and I'll start it right here at that corner, that anchor. Click it and drag, and then I'll bring it down and let it lock into that bottom part of the rectangle there and release. And then I'll zoom in because it seems like it's a little bit off over here. So Control plus, plus, plus. And then I'll make sure that it's lining up. And there we go. Now it is. And then, sorry, I clicked by accident. I'll go ahead and click on the selection tool and click off of it. And that looks good. And you'll notice that it drew this rectangle with the same fill and stroke properties that I used the last time. So I didn't have to change anything, and that's good. So Control minus takes me out. And I think that is it. That's my pattern. Let's see if I go back to my example over here. Yeah, I think that was it. Okay. So once you have that, you're all set. And again, this is all I want to draw. And like I had mentioned, our elevations of buildings, they repeat themselves. They're wonderful patterns for a lot of them. Some of the more recent, more contemporary structures probably don't follow the pattern, and that's all right. Really interesting um, designs in that regard, in that case. So there's the pattern. And I was able to use the photo as an example. So I now will use Control 0 to show me the full artboard. So this photograph, I don't need anymore. So I'm just going to click on it and delete. So that goes away, and I still have my photo over here. And then I'm going to take my objects and I'm going to window them like this, and I will group them. So they're all selected. I can right click here and make a group. So now I can move that over. And then the size of the group does matter a little bit. So go ahead, once you have the group, now you can make it bigger or smaller as needed, but hold down that shift key so that everything scales proportionally. So I'll make it about that big right now. So that's my group. And then I can proceed to make my grid pattern based on that. So I'll pan this over here like I did before, but you can go ahead and place it anywhere. And then now that I have this object, I am going to make a copy of it. So select it. I'll do a Control copy, Control C, and then a Control V. And Control V, I'll paste it right over here because this is what I want to turn into a grid. And I want to hang on to this as an example that I'm going to use in a little bit. So now that I have that object or the group here, I can now go ahead and come over here to Object, Repeat, and Grid. So I'm going to click on that, and that makes a grid for me. And now I can take this grid and bring it down and then bring it in. And there's some grips up here. I can click and drag those, and it just separates the objects in the horizontal direction. This one separates them in the vertical or brings them together. And what I want to do is actually just make sure that they're next to each other. So this repeat option that's showing up, I'm going to set that to 0. So select all of that, type 0. Come over here, you can double click and then type 0 and then click on the other one. And that is the pattern repeating itself. And you can just drop it in over here. And then I can make this bigger or smaller if I wanted to. And then if I needed to, I'll zoom in like this, a little bit more like that. Back to my selection tool, double click in here. And notice how it looks like it selected my objects. And also notice how up at the top it says grid repeat. We're inside of this grid repeating pattern. I can go ahead and, let's see, can I? Yeah, pan, click and drag, and I can move it around. You don't need to. I'm just showing you what you can do. And then once again, because this one's a little tricky, so let me go ahead and click outside of that, double click outside of that group, and notice how I'm back. So double click inside of it. That once you double click, you'll see that it says grid repeat. Go ahead and give it one click in there so that nothing is selected, and then click and drag. And this takes a couple of tries. Actually, let's try it again. Click it and drag it. No. Okay, it's selected. And now if I move it, okay, I guess it does have to be selected. That's on me. So you can move it around, and it doesn't matter where it starts, where it ends. This is just us doing a study and to see what it looks like when it repeats. But if you want to really fine tune it, I found that it's better to kind of lock it to one corner. So if I bring it over here like this and over here at the top like that, and then I'll go and instead of double clicking out, right here where it says grid repeat, there's an arrow. I'll go back one level, click here, and then I'll just bring that up and let it start right there. And then I'll take this one. Nope, I can't change it there. I need to bring this over like that. So I need to double click inside of it again. It has that selected. I can now bring that over. And I guess I want that to be the edge of it like that. I'll click outside of it or double click outside of it, click here, and then bring that over right about there. And then I will click and drag all of it like this. Okay, that's the pattern. And then one last thing, you can double click inside of it. And then in here, because I made this into a group, I need to double click into it. So now that I double click into it, you'll notice it says, okay, now I'm in a group and the group is inside of a grid repeat. So we're down a couple of levels. But the nice thing here is that I can take any of these colors and I'll just use this as an example. I can pick this one. I can change the fill color to something else like, let's say this green right here. And then it changes it on all of them. That's only if you want to. You don't need to. Um, and that's why I spent a good amount of time. I was deliberate in what I had done here to begin with so that I wouldn't have to make the revisions now. But if you need to, if you want to, more than welcome to do that. And then just go ahead and use the arrow key to go back one level and go back a level again, and then back again, and then once more. And that's what you would get. So I guess if you wanted that to repeat itself, to get that variation, you could change these colors ever so slightly. Nothing wrong with that. It's entirely up to you. All right, go ahead, Control 0, and then Control S to save. And that is part 1. That is the grid. And then the next thing to do here is create a pattern, but it's going to be an abstract pattern because I want you to keep practicing that. So I'm going to take my group here and I'm going to Control C to copy it and Control V to paste it. And then I'm going to bring it down here. And then what I'd like you to do, I'm just going to zoom in for a moment. I'm going to type Z and just click and drag in, pan it over, and then go back to my selection tool. Let's see if I type V. Okay, it gives me a selection tool. You select the group of objects, go ahead and right click that and ungroup. Where are we? Let's see, can I do it from here? Is it under arrange? 1 second. Oh, ungroup. There it is. So they're ungrouped. So what I'd like you to do is take all of these objects, the individual objects, take them apart, as you saw in my example here. And I'll just zoom in. And I just took all of those and reassembled them to generate something different, this pattern. So I'll go back to my example. I'll type V, and then I'll just kind of take these apart just to see what it breaks down to. And this, for me, is the fun part where I get to see all of these objects, like what does it break down into? And then what I did is I basically just selected one of the objects. And when you do that, you get the grips, but you also get these control points at every one of the corners. So if you click and drag, notice how it brings them in. And if I bring them in all the way, now I have a half circle. I can bring them in, let's say that far. I can do that. So I'll move that to the side. Let me type V and just move that over. I can take this one, and instead of just clicking and dragging, I'm going to give it one click first so that that is the only point that's highlighted, and then give that a click drag and bring it down like that. I'll do the same thing over here, give that a click, and then bring it up like that. I might take this one also and rotate it. And to do that, click it, and then just hover over any one of the 4 corners. And when you get that 2-way curved arrow, click and drag. You can rotate it. And then I'm holding down the shift key so that it locks to a 45-degree increment. If you want to make it 45, you're more than welcome to. I'm going to make mine 90. I'll just put it right here, but I'm not going to align it. I'm trying to avoid that because maybe the alignment, it might not give me the abstract quality that I want. I'll take this object. I may choose to put it behind like this. Maybe I want it in front, so I can right click and I can look at my draw order and arrange and say bring to front, and that'll bring it all the way to the front. Or if I bring it forward, it just moves it in front of the next object. And I don't know where these two relate to each other in the layers. You see how they are here? It's there. So I guess if I want to move it all the way to the top, I would click it and drag it. Let's see. Nope, I changed that color. Give me 1 second. Edit, undo, and click off of it. Click on it. It selects that one, that rectangle. I click and drag it up, and now it places it above that one. And that's maybe what I want. Maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe I take this one now and put it over here. And then I can take the objects here and click and drag one of them, make it round, place it there, rotate it, lock it into 90 degrees like that. Maybe it goes up here. And then what do I do with these other shapes? Well, it might get to be too much of the same color, but what I'd like you to do is stay within the same color range. So what I mean by that is keep the colors, and maybe you want to take one of these, and you see the color that you have there. Give that a double click, and maybe you want to change the brightness on it a little bit. It'll still relate to the others. Maybe the saturation is what you'd like to change, still relates to the others. Whatever you'd like to do, just to give it a little bit of pop. Maybe I take this one, double click my color swatch. Maybe I want to make that one in terms of saturation. I want it to be more saturated. Give that an OK. Move it over here. Maybe I just want to take one of the corners and bring it in all the way like that. And just play around with it. And then the other thing to do is you can use the eyedropper and match some properties. And forgive me if I get this wrong the first time, so just kind of watch and see what I'm going to do here. I want this rectangle to have the same fill color as this shape over here. So it's a match properties, and I'm so used to my architectural programs that I need to think this through. And I usually don't get it right the first time because that's where my brain is in architecture, like AutoCAD and Revit and all that. So let's see. Here's the eyedropper that I want to use. And it says copy and apply appearances between objects. So I'm going to pick this object. And then I'm going to, nope. I'm going to pick this object. Okay, that's the one I want to change. And then I go to the eyedropper. And then I click on this color. And it changes that one. So that worked, thankfully. I go back to my selection tool. I'll pick this object and I want to change the color. I'll go to the eyedropper and I'll change it to this color. And then I'll type V, pick this object and the eyedropper. Is there a keyboard shortcut for that? I. Okay, so I'll type I and I'll change it to this color. And then I'll go back to my selection tool and now I'll continue to organize these. And if you want to rotate it 90 or rather 45 degrees, you're more than welcome to. And I'm just holding down the shift key. Maybe that'll work. Don't know, but it's always fun to play with these. And then I'll take this one and click on that dot and then bring that in and maybe put it over here. And just play around with the shapes. Just don't change the proportions on them. So what I'm saying is don't take this and shrink it this way or shrink it that way. Stay away from that because now it doesn't match what we started with. So I'm going to undo the scale there, undo the scale there. Leave them as they are, just manipulate the shapes. And there are ways to bring these together to weld. There's some examples online how I can match these shapes or bring them together or separate, but now that I think about it, we'll stay away from that. Just take these and play around with them. And I'm just going to move this one over here, move this one here, and then take this one and rotate it and put it right there. And you don't have to box it in. You don't have to, constrain it so it fits within a rectangular shape. It's okay if it doesn't. I'm going to zoom out, Control minus. There we go. Click over here. But you'll see that if I do, once I make a pattern, you're going to see how it affects my arrangement here. So I'm ready to make a pattern out of this. So I'm going to zoom out again. So Control minus. And by the way, go ahead and save. And now what I can do is select all of my objects and then come over here to Object and Shape. No, not Shape. Pattern. I go to Pattern and I say Make Pattern. And when I make the pattern, it says a new pattern has been added to the swatch panel. And if you look at the swatches, I'll go ahead and click OK. There it is. And then as soon as I click that OK, it's showing me what that pattern is going to look like. There's the swatch, and it's just going to allow me to edit the pattern. And I'm inside of it right now. So I'm going to zoom in right here. And you'll see where if I select objects, if I move this one, see how it moves it everywhere, which is great. I maybe can take this object, bring it over, let it line up there. Maybe bring this one down a bit. Just play around with it. Have fun, but make it as random as you can. And this is where if I take this object now and I bring it up, see how it's coming out of that area, but I don't want to bring it out. So I'm going to ask that you keep everything inside and maybe just bring it down. So if you want to have like some space in there, just work to the inside of the pattern. And then right now I have it set to a grid type, but you can try and change it to brick by row. You get that effect. You can try brick by column, hex by column, and you get really interesting shapes there. The width and the height you can adjust. So maybe instead of 1.5, if I did, and I'm going to constrain this, by the way. If I set this to 2, what does that do? See how it spreads it out a little bit more. Have fun. That's all I'm asking that you do. But I want you to see how you can generate these abstract patterns. So I'll keep mine in a grid, just personal preference. And I'm going to set this, let's say 1.5 for me. That's a little tight, so I'll say 1.6. And it's cutting off that piece, so I'm going to bring that piece in a little bit right there. I'll take this one, bring it in. I don't want it to overlap, so let's see, I'll bring this up, and I'm playing around now. That goes here, maybe that goes there, there, just so I can see them all. All right. And then I'll go ahead and click Done. And that pattern is now in there. I'm going to zoom out. So I'm using my scrubby zoom to do that. If not, it's a Control minus. I'll take my shapes. I'm going to select them all and just move them over here. And I can group them right now. And then I'm going to create another rectangle. And I'll put that rectangle right here. And then for the fill color, or the fill, let's see, go to the properties. Yeah, the fill, it's going to be that pattern right there. And that's it. And then organize it any way that you want. If the photo needs to get bigger or smaller, you decide. I'm just showing this to you as an example. It is not my intention to show you how to align or arrange. I want you to practice that, and I'll give you some feedback. Maybe they both want to be the same size. I don't know. You need to determine this because you're studying. This is part of the visual training, and you're studying how to arrange objects. So I leave it in your hands to do that. I'm going to zoom in here for a second and just show you that if I take my rectangle, see as I'm moving the rectangle, the pattern doesn't really move at all. So keep that in mind. And then if I make the rectangle bigger or smaller, it's cropping it, and there's nothing wrong with that. If I go to rotate it, I'm just rotating the rectangle, but not the pattern. So keep that in mind. And you don't have to rotate. I'm just showing you options on what to do, some possibilities. So I'll leave mine like that, more or less. And then I'll do a Control 0, zoom out, and then I'll just start playing around with all of these arrangements and see what might work best for me, but you need to decide what's going to work best for you. All right, and that is taking a building, analyzing the repeating pattern, and recreating that repeating pattern, and then creating an abstracted pattern. I'm sorry, creating a grid, repeating the grid so that you understand how the grid works, and then creating an abstract pattern from it. So have fun, save the file, and then you'll be printing this out as a PDF. To print as a PDF, I guess I should show that to you right now real quick. You'll come up here to File. You will already have it saved. You'll go to Print. And when you go to Print, the printer you're going to select is Adobe PDF because all you have the Creative Cloud access. If you need to, I will recommend that you launch Adobe Acrobat just to make sure it's working. Mine was, so I'm just going to proceed. That's my printer, and then my size, where it says media size here, I'm going to say custom. And when I click on custom, it's going to now be the size of the artboard, which is what I want. It is auto rotating for me. Great. And then printing all visible and printable layers is fine. And then you can go ahead and print. We're not going to get into any of these details over here. They're not really important to what we're doing right now. Go ahead and click print. It's going to ask for where to save it. I'll just go ahead and mine says untitled. I'll just save, even though it should have a formal name. It is creating the PDF. There it is. I'm going to give it a moment here to finish. And it takes a little bit of time. All set. All set. And then Adobe Acrobat should launch, and it launched on my second screen right here. So I'm going to move it. Actually, I can't because I'm getting an alert. I just want to show that to you. On Adobe Acrobat, it says that it contains only an image. Would you like to run text recognition? I'm going to say no to that right now, and then I'll show it to you. Here we go. So there it is. And then make sure it's 11 by 17 just by hovering your cursor down in the lower left corner. There's the sheet size. There it is. I'm going to zoom out, see what that looks like. And notice how the colors just, they all kind of work together because we based it off of the building. And then we made some slight modifications. All right, that is all. Save the PDF, similar file name, but the Adobe file is going to be .ai. This is going to be .pdf, and then this will go into your portfolio. All right, thank you very much. Have fun.